Hi, everybody. It is good to be here. If you're joining us on Facebook or if you're in the room, we welcome you. We are glad to see you, to share as we continue this series, Be Well Read. Now, this series, of course, centers around books. These are books that have impacted me personally and professionally, and they are books that I believe can impact you as well. If you choose to read them, as you seek to be well read, but also to be well and to serve well. And as most of you know, I am founder and lead coach with Be Well, Serve Well, which is a wellness initiative where we seek to help people increase immunity, increase energy, health, joy, and generosity. I believe that we're here on this planet to serve each other, to serve our communities, and to serve our Creator. We can't do that if we're not well. Be well, serve well. In the wake of a health crisis, which has become a financial crisis and has many people recognizing the need to renew their commitment for wellness, it's our mission to help people heal, to help people move in a direction, being well and serving well. It's good to be together. It's good to be in community. And today we will find out just how important community is in our wellness and our wholeness as I share with you the works of Dan Buettner. Now, Dan lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but he's probably not there very much. He travels the world researching the places on the planet that have the highest concentration of centenarians, people who live to 100 and beyond. He's dedicated his life to researching the world's best practices in health, in happiness, and in longevity. Here on the island, we're fans of the color blue, the blue sea, a bright blue sky, and today you just might become a fan of a new form of blue. I hope so. So let's dive in. A few weeks ago, I shared with you a quote by a woman named Chris Carr. She's one of my sheroes. She's a cancer thriver, living now for 17 plus years with an inoperable cancer. And she is living still. And this is what she says. The challenge comes when we let the familiar stand in the way of the possible. Now, the books I'm going to share with you today will help you understand why I believe that health is a knowing, not a number. These books are not only fascinating, they're informative. So much health and well-being is possible, whatever our age, and you will meet inspiring people on these pages. I want you to read all the books I share, but these are a couple of my favorites, I confess, as they truly inspire us to move beyond what's familiar and to begin to believe what is possible for ourselves and for the people in our lives. So who likes to travel? Everybody, right? Okay, we're gonna do some traveling today. Some of you know that my tagline is explore, surrender, heal. Today we're going to explore together. Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, the Nagoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, Loma Linda, California, and Ikaria, Greece. What do these 5 places spread all around the world have in common? These are blue zones, areas with the world's highest concentration of centenarians, people living to 100 and beyond. And they are the subject and work of the work and passion of Dan Buettner, who invites us to travel with him and then to bring home the best practices of what the world has to offer. Dan's groundbreaking work on longevity began with his 2005 National Geographic cover story called The Secrets of Long Life. He went on to write 3 national bestsellers. 1, Blue Zones, and there's a second edition that's out. It's a little bit bigger than my copy. I got one of the first ones way back when. He's also written a book called Thrive, Blue Zones of Happiness. And then today we're also going to talk about the Blue Zone Solution, the Blue Zone Solution. There's even a Blue Zone cookbook, Blue Zone Kitchen, I think it's called. It's amazing, I've been told. So let's answer the most pressing question. Why blue? Why blue? Dr. Michael Poulain was a Belgian demographer who had dedicated his life, similarly to Dan Buettner, and his professional career to studying the pockets of long-lived people around the world. And in 2000, he traveled to Sardinia, Italy, where he was trying to follow up on a claim that he'd heard at a longevity conference. As he zeroed in on areas where there were, in fact, high levels of people living to 100 and beyond, centenarians, Dr. Poulain turned from his desk to circle each region on a map. And the pen that he used just happened to have blue ink. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Blue zones was born, and it became the term later adopted by other demographers across the world. Now, Buettner begins his initial book, Blue Zones, Lessons for Living Longer, by asking a series of questions. What exactly is aging? What's the average American lifespan? Is there a pill that can extend life? You know, the fountain of youth. Maybe these are important questions, but to me, the most pressing question is this: how can we maximize the good years? Buettner asked these questions of a panel of experts, and to this last question, Dr. Robert Kane replies. Dr. Kane is director of the Center on Aging and the Minnesota Geriatric Education Center at the University of Minnesota. Kane points out two further questions as his answer. I like that. His questions were this: how long can I live? How well can I live? These are two very different questions. Living an extra 2 years on life support doesn't sound very appealing, but it's all too familiar. What is possible? To quote Dr. Dean Ornish, who writes in the foreword for the Blue Zone solution, it's not just how long we live, it's how well we live, dying young, as old as possible. Think about that for a minute. Dying young, as old as possible. I want to shift through here because I missed something that I want to share with you. And I don't really know where it is, but I'm going to find it. Maybe it's still coming up. Dying young, as old as possible. In our society, we give a lot of weight to genetics, even though scientific studies show that 25%, only 25% of how long we live is determined by our genes. The other 75% is a combination of environment, lifestyle choices we make every day, including how we eat. Now, these books are about discovering the world's best practices for health, longevity, and putting them to practice in our own lives, teaching them to our children, incorporating them and choosing them in college and as young adults. Experts say that if we adopted the world's best practices, the right lifestyle, we could add at least 10 good years to our lives, and we could avoid and suffer a fraction of the diseases that kill us prematurely. We could, in fact, die young, as old as possible. In the preface to Blue Zones, Buettner writes about centenarian wisdom. He says this: if wisdom is the sum of knowledge and experience, then centenarians have a lot to offer us. They have more wisdom than anyone else. We would do well to learn from some of the people we meet on our travels through the pages of these books. In Sardinia, Italy, there's a greeting, Akia, A-K-E-A. It's a greeting which roughly translates to, may you live to be 100. Can you imagine if we started to greet one another that way? Pam, may you live to be 100. It would at least bring it to our consciousness and raise the possibility. In Sardinia, many do live to be 100, especially men. Now, in most developed parts of the world, centenarian women outnumber men 4 to 1. 4 to 1. In Sardinia, the ratio is 1 to 1. Perhaps Giuseppe Mura, at the age of 102, has something to teach us. Giuseppe spent most of his life working 16-hour days, first as a farmer and then as a shepherd. Physical labor without many modern convenience turns out to be an asset. And the steeper the terrain, research found, the longer people tended to live. So it would seem our idea of downsizing to a one-story home might not be the best idea. Moving naturally throughout the day is one of the lessons of the Blue Zones. The shepherds of Sardinia were gently walking up and down all day long, both in the pastures and in their villages. Everyday hikes by Sardinian shepherds can burn up to 490 calories an hour. 16-hour days, you can do that math. That's almost 8,000 calories burned a day. So let's explore a bit further east, traveling from Italy to Japan, Okinawa, Japan, to be exact, an exotic string of islands, beaches hemming a turquoise sea, Blue Zones in more ways than one. It is here where we find the world's longest living women. You knew that was coming, including Kamada Nakasato. In Okinawa, the word retirement doesn't exist. The idea of retirement never occurred to the Okinawan peasant. The family works together to carve out of life, and as they do, they honor their elders, looking to them for wisdom. No retirement homes, no assisted livings, no putting anyone out to pasture. Elders live with babies and children and teenagers and young adults, several generations within one household, with respect and understanding. And the impact of this lesson from the Blue Zones not only impacts the elders, it has impact on the adult children living in the house, lowering their diseases and increasing their immunity. Part of the wisdom of centenarians in all the Blue Zones is, of course, a lesson in eating wisely. For those over 100 in Okinawa, there's a simple phrase that they learned earlier. It's a phrase or a blessing that they offer before each meal. Hari Hachi Bu. These words translate to eat only until you are 80% full. They know that it takes 20 minutes for our bodies to tell our brains we're full. It's a form of calorie restriction without the deprivation that slows the body's metabolism. It produces less oxidation and then less inflammation, which slows the aging process. Hari Hachi Bu. Kamada also practices a daily ritual called moai, joining a group of lifelong friends every afternoon for a sip of sake or tea and gossip. The connection goes deeper than gossip, though. These are people who have been there for each other. They will be there for each other, and they are there for each other. We've learned during the pandemic that connection matters. In whatever safe forms we're able to gather like this, continuing to connect, continuing to be in community. This is another lesson of the Blue Zones. Moai matters. When asked, what's the secret to living to 102 years old, Kamada replied like this. I used to be very beautiful. I had hair that came down to my waist. It took me a long time to realize that beauty is within. It comes from not worrying so much about your own problems. Sometimes you can best take care of yourself by taking care of others. Anything else, Dan asked? Eat your vegetables, have a positive outlook, be kind to people, and smile. Ignoring a possible etiquette breach, he writes, I embraced Kamada before we left, which she enthusiastically returned. Beneath her kimono, I could feel her delicate bones. It occurred to me that I was embracing a century of life, and there was something in that knowledge that inspired profound affection and respect. I asked her if we could return. Of course you may, she said. I'm not going anywhere. We would do well to learn from the wisdom of this centenarian. There are other guiding principles, lessons to be learned in this particular Blue Zone region of the world, including ikigai, which is having a reason for waking up in the morning. Each of the centenarians in these books, whatever the region where they live, still feels a sense of purpose every day in their family and in their community. and each is held in high regard, even and especially at age 100 and beyond. We would also do well to learn from the wisdom of the community, too. Traveling quite a distance now from Japan to the Nagoya Peninsula of Costa Rica, we find perhaps my favorite story in Buettner's original book. This is the story of Panchetta and Tommy. So I want to read this to you. It was 7 in the morning in the village, and already the tropical sun was bearing down as I opened the squeaky front gate and called into the pastel pink home of Tomas Castillo, Tommy, to his friends. A moment later, Tommy emerged with his big white tooth grin, his brown pants tucked into his boots, a t-shirt and his New York Yankees baseball cap pulled down low on his brow. Listo? Ready? He asked, with no intention of waiting for a reply. We mounted a pair of bikes and with a truant's delight rolled out into the hot Costa Rican morning. Tommy leaned forward over his handlebars as we swooped down the street with the wind whistling past our ears and the blurred line of aqua, pink, and ocean blue houses swooshing by. We squeezed our handbrakes and slowed at the town square. Our route took us by the town clinic, past a mechanic, where the rhythm of local cowboy music blared into the street from tinny speakers. We swooped down another hill past the village school, and from there the homes thinned out. On one side of the road, buildings gave way to a wall of jungle. The road then dipped to where the pavement bridged a creek and continued up a steep incline. Tommy stood up hard on his pedals and pulled ahead of me. I was breathing heavily. Sweat trickled down my back. We followed an unmarked dirt road into the forest. Our bike wheels traced parallel ruts past a horse barn and a vegetable garden, and the road stopped at a clearing with a raised chicken coop, a tin-roofed wooden house, and a woodshed stacked high with split logs. Out front, a woman wearing a bright pink dress, hoop earrings, and carnival beads vigorously swept the jungle floor, sending up a dust cloud. Behind her, a few long golden pencils of light angled through the trees. Hola, mama, shouted Tommy as he dismounted his bike. Tommy is 80 years old in the story, his mother 100. Two things we can note beyond the obvious about that story. One is that in Costa Rica in 2008, when this book was published, Costa Ricans spent 15% of what Americans spent on healthcare. And with the people of Costa Rica living longer and seemingly healthier lives than anywhere else on earth. And then also, the caption of a photo of Panchetta notes that she was resting following her day of cooking, splitting that wood, and using a machete to clear brush from her front yard. More wisdom for our journey. And we're on our way again. This time, the round the world exploration brings us back to America. Another story, Marge Jetton began her day with prayers and power walking. After getting dressed each morning, she would step out into the hall of her apartment building and begins to walk six times down the hall and around, 6 times circling through the dining room, always drinking a glass of water as she comes through the dining room, 6 times down, 6 times around, 6 glasses of water before breakfast. Many of us don't drink 6 glasses of water in a day. Like centenarians in other countries, Marge has a plant-based eating lifestyle, what Buettner refers to as the plant slant. You know, I like that. It clearly fuels her energy. Stick with me and listen. After a breakfast of oatmeal, Marge continues her activity, heading down to the exercise room, where she jumps on an exercise bicycle and pedals between 6 and 8 miles a day. Next, she picks up a pair of 5-pound weights and runs through a series of lifting and stretching movements. Following these morning activities, you might find her in the community garden where she grows tomatoes and corn and flowers and roses. On certain days, she volunteers. Marge delivers recyclable bottles to a woman on welfare who will redeem those bottles for deposits. She also stops at the Adult Services Center, an activity center for seniors, not to join in the activities, but to drop off bundles of magazines that she has collected throughout the week. She says, quote, "The old folks here like to read them and cut out the pictures." Old folks? Really? In our story, Marge is 100. Marge died at the age of 107 after a long, full life. It is possible. It is also possible to be 94 years old and in open heart surgery. Not as the patient on the table, though, but as one of the team of surgeons still practicing medicine. This is the life of Dr. Ellsworth Wareham, invited into the OR as an assistant surgeon by younger colleagues who continue to trust his top quality skills and want him in the room. It is possible. But how? And more specifically, how can we here in Fernandina or wherever you are as you listen, how can we live not only long, but truly well? Part of the answer is found at the end of our fork. You knew it would be there. Both Ellsworth and Marge hail from America's first blue zone, located in Loma Linda, California, where a community of Seventh-day Adventists chooses to live in a way that is age-defying. One secret to their longevity is found in their belief that good health is a reflection of good faith and stewardship, and their belief that a plant-based eating lifestyle not only fuels their health, it honors the earth and provides strength to the community. Our travels now find us landing in the pages of Buettner's latest book, The Blue Zone's Solution. Here, according to the New York Times, we continue our deep dive into places around the world where people have the beguiling habit of forgetting to die. With the Blue Zone Solutions, we add a fifth blue zone, this one overlooking the cobalt blue of the Aegean Sea in Ikaria, Greece. It is here where a woman, age 101, when asked why she thought people there lived so long, very nonchalantly answered, "We just forget to die." Forgetting how to die, we too might learn to live. The Blue Zone Solution truly offers us a blueprint for how we might do just that. In this most recent work, Buettner introduces these 5 blue zones again from around the world, though more briefly, and this time with an emphasis on the longevity eating lifestyle of each region. Whatever the country, we find a variation of that plant slant from the first book, with meat seldom eaten, and only then on special occasions. Next, Buettner introduces his current life's work. It's called the Blue Zones Project, and he shares results of wellness transformation projects that he's done in Minnesota, in Iowa, and in Southern California. National Institute of Health grants and partnerships with city councils, mayors, and community leaders. These allow the Blue Zones Project to work with communities around our nation to bring about sustainable, meaningful, and measurable health outcomes. Perhaps you're beginning to realize how aging is a lot more to the story than what we've been told. There's a biological aging, yes, but there's also an environmental aging. There's an aging in isolation, certainly, but there's also an aging in community. I believe if we let go of the familiar and lean into the Blue Zones Solution, we'll find that it is indeed possible to live long and truly well. So let's travel one more time. We're going to go to North Karelia, Finland, where in 1972, an international team of academics identified a major public health crisis. Middle-aged men were dropping dead of heart attacks at the highest known rates in the world. To address the problem, they appointed a 27-year-old physician who also had a master's in social sciences. And he decided to shift the focus from trying to change individual behaviors to changing the physical and social environments in which the individuals lived. Here are some of the results. Smoking rates dropped from 52% to 31%. The mortality rate of coronary heart disease in middle-aged men, these that we were concerned about, was reduced by 73%. Life expectancy for men rose by 7 years, and for women by 6 years. This is how our environment influences our choices and our health. On this topic, Buettner quotes Professor Brian Wansink, director of Cornell University's Food and Brand Labs and author of a fascinating book, Mindless Eating. Wansink says this about the environment around us and the social situations that influence our eating. We overeat not because of hunger, but because of family and friends, packages and plates, names and numbers, labels and lights, candles and colors, shapes and smells, distractions and distances, cupboards and containers. Buettner's Blue Zone project is designed to change these elements in our environment. It is one powerful way that the Blue Zone solution is realized. Now, here are a few examples of changes to the environment that we might all consider. Writing about changes within our schools, Buettner notes that fundraisers where children are asked to sell candy and cookies are sending the wrong message. A better idea? Walking marathons where kids get donations for participating. One school raised $20,000 and they got to keep every penny. There's no overhead. Speaking of walking, in Albert Lea, Minnesota, as they launched their Blue Zones project, everyone was invited to participate, but not only in community gardens and cooking classes, but also in walking moais. Remember the moai? Before long, over 800 people in this small town were walking in small groups, building friendships and building health, one step at a time. There's so much in these books, and I can't share it all with you, or you won't have a good reason to purchase them, which I truly hope you'll want to read these. I must mention 2 more Blue Zone projects, especially one in a beach community. The Beach Cities, that is an area south of LAX in California. It includes Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, and Redondo Beach. Now, you might think a beach community is almost healthy by definition. Not so fast. Sorry, Fernandina. Still, despite this enviable location, these communities in California were not immune to the same pressures, nor are we, the pressures and habits that afflict those living in the rest of the nation. After 3 years of being involved in the Blue Zones project, these are just a few of the results. Listen up. A 14% drop in obesity, representing a savings of more than $2.3 million a year in incremental health cost. A 30% drop in smoking rate, saving another $6.7 million in healthcare costs annually. It's easy to see that our current pandemic is not the only time when a health burden becomes a financial burden, and not just individually, corporately. Other results from the beach cities: the number of residents exercising increased by 10%, that's a gain, and both diabetes and high blood pressure were down. The Blue Zone solution works. Buettner devotes well over half of the Blue Zone solution to outlining how to build your own Blue Zone, including food rituals, menus, and tips for Blue Zones living. For people in the Blue Zones, he writes, quote, growing, preparing, serving, and eating are all sacred practices with power to bring their families, their homes, their communities, their beliefs, and the natural world together in daily rhythms and harmonies, end quote. Where food is concerned, Buettner outlines some practical steps that help us shift from an American culture of convenience to the missing ingredient of consciousness. There's even an entire section in the Blue Zone's solutions of 77 Blue Zone recipes. And I plan to make the Icarian stew. Stay tuned on that. I'll probably post something on Facebook about that recipe. It's the recipe Buettner claims is his hands down favorite. That's reason enough to buy the book right there, I think. People love recipes. Wrapping up the book, Buettner spells out what he believes about the secret to longevity. The secret to longevity, whether for individuals or communities, does not rest with the federal government, nor does it rest with the medical community. Doctors aren't going to fix our country's biggest health problems. They're better at making sick people less sick than they are at preventing sickness in the first place. It's not their job. And pharmaceutical companies aren't going to help much. They're primarily in the business of selling drugs to sick people. The answer lies with the people in your community. People in the community like you and like me. People like Bob Fagan, city manager in Spencer, Iowa. In November 2012, Bob Fagan stepped to the microphone at a community gathering to share his personal experience. Quote, "A year ago, we invited the Blue Zones Project into our community, and it has begun to transform us. But I want to tell you a personal story. 8 months ago, I discovered I had about a third of my kidney function left," end quote. He went on to share how his dad died of kidney failure, just as my mother did. And he vowed, quote, "I wasn't going to die that way. Every time I sat down for a meal, I thought about my 2 granddaughters. And I began to move naturally, the Blue Zones way. I went back to the specialist this week. My cholesterol is down and blood pressure are back to normal. And," with a pause, he said, "my kidneys are functioning at 100%. The Blue Zone solution works, but not only for individuals. In Bob's town of Spencer, Iowa, the number of people with chronic diseases is down 60%. And by 2015, when this book was published, healthcare costs among city workers had dropped every year, in some cases by 50% in a single year. The pandemic has taught us health is collective. The wisdom of centenarians can teach us too that what is familiar just might be standing in the way of what is possible. Anti-wrinkle creams, hair color, age-defying lotions and potions. These are familiar. Centrum for seniors, this is familiar. Cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's disease. These are too familiar. Senior centers. These are too familiar. What will we do to change from the familiar to the possible, to what is possible? Sometime as a child, I decided I wanted to live to be 100. I didn't have preconceived notions. I still don't. Even with a mother who died at 64 and a dad who died at 67. I have hope of a long, full, and fulfilling life. I believe that it's possible in part because I choose each day to be well in order to serve well, knowing that the days become weeks and the weeks become months and the months become years. Might something unforeseen happen to cut that short? Of course. And yet, I now know, you now know, we now know what is possible, so much more than we had been led to believe. The challenge arises when we let the familiar stand in the way of the possible. Let's not let the familiar stand in our way. Let's make choices every day that lead us and those we love to a new familiar. Let's forget how to die and learn how to live. Let's create a Blue Zone right here where we are on the island, or in North Carolina, or Alabama, Georgia, Glasgow, Scotland, all places where I know there might be people listening in. Let's build our moai. Let's find our ikigai, our reason, our purpose for living, and then let's share it with others. In this season of gift giving, that might be the best gift possible. Now, it would be a gift to us if you're listening on Facebook, if you'll go down into the comments section, especially today, and tell us where you are. We've been traveling the world, and we'd like to know who's been traveling with us. So if you'll put down your city and state, if you're out of the country, your city and country, that would be great. These gifts are also, these books are also great gifts in this season of gift giving. So remember to visit Story and Song if you're on the island, or their online bookshop for your gifts this season. It's always a gift to be with you. I thank you for joining me. I thank those who are in the room today. This is an absolute treat, and I'm very grateful for it. I thank Story and Song for their hospitality week by week, and it's good to be here in the second story. And I also thank Connor behind the scenes. He's always bringing me to you over the airwaves and helping make the magic. Be well read, friends. Let's create our blue zones. Let's be well and serve well. Thank you. No, we're good.